start.
Hi, this is Chet here from Avion Technology here in the Chicagoland area. We are a digital agency which specializes in working for other digital agencies. We also do product development, helping entrepreneurs go to market, and we also work, the third area we work in is with small businesses, helping them establish a digital presence. So today I'm actually going to talk about something related to digital agencies. A lot of the agencies that we work with, they're kind of boutique digital agencies, usually between $1 to $5 million in revenue, usually about 20 to 40 full-time employees, mostly about 30 full-time employees, and a lot of them struggle with the same problems. Usually the problems are around scaling up. So I've been doing a series of late on how to help digital agencies scale up. So this is again an extension of that series. So the title of today's topic is how can digital agencies scale up painlessly. So the first area that a lot of digital agencies struggle with is process. So the first thing that you can actually scale up with very well is by creating a kind of an autopilot process for your agency. It's because of the way a lot of agencies are kind of structured. A lot of them sometimes are you have married couples as the core founders. You have a few relatives who are also working in different roles. So a lot of agencies are actually structured informally. A lot of them are family kind of businesses. So the process flows also tend to kind of be informal, and that actually kind of augurs badly for success outcomes, right? So if you want to have good outcomes on your projects, on your campaigns, the first thing you kind of need is a replicable process, a process that you can repeat day in and day out, whether it be for client onboarding, for example, to project closure analysis, right? The entire life cycle of a project should be fairly replicable and repeatable. There are a lot of tools available out there. One of the tools I like is Trello. There's also Asana, there's Jira, there's Monday.com. So there's a lot of tools out there which can help you make scalable processes, make replicable processes. But like they always say, right, execution is the key. So a lot of these, it's not planning which is important, it's actually execution. It's actually those daily stand-up meetings, it's those project review meetings which are the key. So write down, brainstorm, have a whiteboard session about what in your development life cycle, what in your project life cycle is working out, what is not working out. But at the end of it, come out with a process for how you manage your projects. And then you can extend that to different parts of your business. You can extend that to marketing, to accounts, to everything. But at some point in time, I think each agency kind of needs to evolve from being this little child, where everything is ad hoc, to a mature adult where there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of structure. I have seen in business, structure leads to good outcomes, right? The more structure you have, the more better outcomes you're going to have in terms of project success, in terms of employee retention, in terms of profitability, all these different parameters. The more structure you have, the better it is going to be. So the first point I want to make is in this series of how do you scale up a digital agency painlessly is have automate your process workflows. Let your agency function on an autopilot. One of the side kind of things that will happen because of this is if you have an agency that kind of functions on an autopilot, you as the owner or the principal could actually then start spending time on things that add value to your business. A lot of times what I do see is that of the founders or the owners, they're spending too much time in the weeds, in the operations, in the day-to-day fighting, in the firefighting, crisis management, and that leaves them no bandwidth to plant the seeds for future work. And I'll come to this in one of the next topics. But when you automate your processes, you as the owner you start getting some extra time, which you can then spend on learning, which you can spend on your family, which you can spend on, on your fitness, or you can spend that time in creating relationships, and those relationships in turn are going to get you more work in the future. So if you're running an agency and if you're like 2 or 3 years into the whole thing, spend a quarter, right, in kind of automating your processes, and I think that'll give you, that'll kind of pay off big time. The second thing is scale up your service offering. This is something that I faced in my company, because we were a very tech shop, highly technical. And so we always looked at marketing almost as a sideshow. And if you ask most developers, they don't regard the world of SEO very highly. It's kind of like, the way doctors look at chiropractors. I mean, sure, they they respect chiropractors, sorry, but doctors don't treat them as equals, right? Similarly, I think a lot of developers, they don't treat SEO specialists and marketing folks as equals. But the fact is that in today's world, SEO brings more, if not the same amount of money, and it's something that can be learned very easily, right? And almost every web project, every digital project needs some form of marketing, whether it be content, whether it be social media presence, whatever. So another way in which you can scale up your business really fast is diversify your service offering. Make sure you offer them hosting, make sure you're offering them support, make sure you're offering them programming, make sure you're offering them marketing. So again, these are like incremental revenue streams that you can bring to your business. The third thing is, and I touched on this in the first topic, is develop great relationships. I see this a lot of times in a lot of small businesses, is that the principals are so involved in the day-to-day activities that they don't have time to develop great relationships. They don't have time to invest in relationships, and that kind of hamstrings your company's growth, because your next big client, your next big project is actually going to happen maybe a year or two from now. But to get to that point, you have to start planting the seeds today. In my own personal experience, it takes about a year of networking, right? It takes about a year of spending time in your community, in all these networking groups or whatever, before you actually start getting something out of it. So you have to invest the time. So start investing. I read somewhere, I think it was the guy who started BNI, I forget his name, Ivan Meisner, I think, who said that the top producers in most companies typically spend about 6 hours in a week networking. I don't know if that number is achievable for you, but definitely look at, start small. I always say make incremental starts, maybe an hour or two. That's still better than doing nothing, right? So spend about an hour or two, go for an event or two, start making those connections very slowly. I personally, I do not like networking at all. By nature, I'm an introvert. So networking, I hate networking. It sucks. The whole idea of making a cold introduction to someone I don't know and then making absolutely artificial conversation with the hope that one day I can make money off the other person is so fake, so pretentious for me, that I really hate networking. Similarly, I'm not a big fan of social media, and the reason being that I tend to get hooked onto things very fast, and my fear always is that if I start going to Facebook, if I start going on LinkedIn, very soon that's all I'll be doing and I'll stop working. So I hate networking and I hate social media. Well, what do? So I have outsourced social media to someone else, and they take care of all my social media activities. As far as networking goes, I kind of tackle that in a very intelligent way. So I realized that not all events work for me. Events which have 100, 200 plus people, those events don't work out well for me. Which are the events that do work? It's usually small, 15, 20 people kind of events. And I like to volunteer, because there's usually some cause for which you're spending time. So I like to volunteer, and volunteering is a great way, by the way, to make connections. So see what works out for you. but definitely, do take the time out to build great relationships, because it's these relationships which are going to increase your social connections, and those social connections are going to get you business after a couple of years. So definitely, do spend time in the community. The next thing, and this is again easier said than done. If you want to scale up your agency, expand your team. This, I have personally experienced this to be the hardest part, and there's a reason why. Uh, Hiring a new employee, hiring new talent, onboarding a new talent in bigger companies is easy, because when you have a 4,000 people company, the 4,001st person does not matter, right? He he might be, his attitudes, his skill set, his work ethic, it makes a marginal difference, because you have 4,000 other employees, right? So the 4,001st person does not matter. In a small digital agency with 20-30 folks, that new hire could a lot of times make or break the work environment. I have had experience of incredible folks who came in, and they just changed the whole company. They, when I was 20 or 30 people old, we had a few folks who came in, and they were very diligent, very industrious, and they kind of just um, took the company to a new level. And similarly, I have had experience with toxic personalities, who kind of just make the whole work environment toxic. So yeah, if you want to scale up, expanding your team is a great idea, but please, it could also be somewhat of a catch-22, because how do you expand your team, especially for a small business, a family-owned business, without taking on a few risks? So I have seen actually what kind of solves this problem is, make your new hire, see if they can solve a personality. There's a lot of personality, especially the Myers-Briggs, right? There's a lot of personality kind of evaluation tools available online, and see if they can solve one of those. Now, what that can do is it can give you an idea about the kind of person that that you are kind of dealing with. Because there's a lot of types of people, right? There's introverts, there's extroverts, there's introvert extroverts, there's extrovert introverts. So there's so many types of people, and sometimes people are a great fit. Like if you have an accounting position, and if you see someone who loves to crunch numbers, and who loves to sit in the back office for long hours, and who's very picky about the details, that person would be a perfect fit for an accountant, but that person would not be a good social media manager. So have that person take an online personality assessment quiz to make sure that you have a good chance of this person fitting the profile. The last point is, again, it goes back to develop great relationships, is kind of remember the long term, right? We live in an age when everyone wants to be a billionaire in 3 years, right? And the worst part is media and social media kind of make it seem so normal. I've been in the Chicagoland area, and I've seen a lot of incubators. I know 1871 is one of those. There's so many accelerators and incubators out there, and you meet folks in your 20s, in their mid 20s and early 30s, and they're actually depressed, because they've been working at an idea for 4 years, 5 years, and they're actually doing well, but they're depressed by the fact that they're still not billionaires or multimillionaires. And a lot of times I tell them, guys, it takes about 5 years to make your business break even, and maybe it takes 5 more years after that for your business to kind of start functioning on an autopilot. So it does take 10 years for the business to kind of settle down, and then another 10 years after that, maybe for your business to kind of become a reputed brand. So in this day and age, when everything is instant, and we want everything to happen tomorrow without breaking a sweat, I think it sometimes is a good idea to remember that these stories that we hear, they are often the exception. They are not the norm. The norm still is a lot of hard work for a long time to get those breaks. So remember the long term, right? I know this, a lot of viewers will just kind of just watching this, they'll kind of just they'll feel like what am I talking about? But this is the truth, right? Success is a lot of small victories over a long period of time. When you hear most of the stories of billionaires and multi-billionaires, you you actually, there's like a 20, 30, 40 year time period during which times those people had small incremental victories, and that's how they made it. Very rarely does it happen that a person gets one victory after maybe 3 years. That's usually a jackpot. And the possibility of that happening is maybe 1 in a billion, or 1 in, I don't know, 500 million. But for most of us, success is small daily victories, small incremental successes built on top of each other, till you kind of come to a point after 20, 30 years when you have built such a good portfolio, and you've built such a good name for your brand in the market, and you have such a nice list of customers who sing praises about your product or your service. That's when you get to a certain place in life. So think about the long term, and if you think about the long term, I think then the scaling up process becomes much more easier, because you realize that scaling up is not so much about showmanship, not so much about salesmanship, but it's actually more about delivering, right? I think the market, or even at a grander level, life, right, gives you the long-term success for good delivery. Whatever profession you might be, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a lawyer, if you keep delivering day in and day out for a long period of time, you will be successful, and your agency will scale up, and you will create a good brand for your product or service or whatever. So that was in a nutshell my little sermon about how to scale up your digital agency. If you have any questions, this is our contact information. I'd love to hear back from you, and hopefully get a chance to chat with you. Thank you so much. This is Chet here from Avion Technology here in the Chicagoland area, and it's Saturday, so I'm heading out. You have yourself a great weekend, and I'll see you on the other side. Thank you.